Hey, welcome everybody to this On Mission podcast episode today. And today I'm jumping into a topic that might be a little triggering to some and maybe encouraging to others. But this idea that the culture that we live in is all about the grind and the hustle. I remember when I was sitting in a meeting and I heard a leader talk about that, and just basically the expectations of that leader was that, hey, you are to grind and hustle, and it's all about the grit and the grind. And I remember sitting there and thinking, like, man, something inside of me didn't align with that thought. And as I've analyzed that going on, it comes down to this, I think, is I was trying to unlearn this type of mentality that our culture seems to promote. And that's what it is. We have our culture that celebrates the grind and the hustle, and then what end up happens is then we have burned out leaders, and you have entrepreneurs that are trying to juggle family and their work and living in that balance or the lack thereof. And you got dads who feel behind. You've got homeowners who feel overwhelmed. And you have a generation coming on of a Gen Z that, man, hey, they're tired of this grind culture. So what's the answer? What's the answer? Well, stick around and we will find out together. All right, as we jump into this idea, I am suggesting to you this very simple thought is this: that clarity is the new hustle. Clarity is the new hustle. You see, why does working harder seem to make leaders poorer and lonelier and more distracted? It's like, man, they're doing what culture says, grind and hustle, but they find themselves poor, lonely, and distracted. So what's missing? Well, my suggestion to us today is simply this, is that it's all about clarity. That clarity is the new hustle. And so if you're grinding it out today, but you still feel stuck, maybe this might offend you. Maybe you don't need more discipline. You just need more clarity in your life. Because the truth of the matter is this: we've all bought into this lie perhaps at some point, and you might be living there, where more effort equals more success. That's what we've been told. But more hours don't equal more revenue necessarily. More meetings don't equal more alignment. More tasks don't mean more progress. I'm sure you found that out. It's like you're still stuck. Just think of it like a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant and they have like 50 items on the menu. I don't know about you, but that's overload for me. I'm just like, really? Especially if you've never been there. And usually the service is going to be slower. Why? Because the chefs have to make so many different entrees. And perhaps if we saw their P&L, it's probably less profitable too. But you go to the ones that are very simple. I mean, you think about the Chipotles of the world that just, you go in, you know what you get, and bam, you're through and you're out. But we live our lives with 50 menu items rather than trying to just consolidate it a little bit and having some great things in our lives and having more clarity. Because it's the lie we've bought into is that, hey, this idea of more effort equals more success. But there's a hidden cost to this whole idea of hustle that people don't even talk about, especially in business, because it shows up in, you have confused teams. You have, reactive leadership. Oh my, we could probably spend a while there. But then you have financial leaks. You're going to have, even in your family life, your kids who feel secondary. You're going to have exhausted marriages, and the list can go on and on. But one of the main core things here is that you have momentum without direction. See, it's like doing a burnout. It's like your vehicle has high RPMs, but you ain't going anywhere. And that can be the hidden cost of hustle just in your business if that's the only thing that you are focused on. So if you're a manager and you're just always demanding more out of your team, for one, you're probably disliked. But if it's not connected to a bigger why and more clarity, it's just creating more chaos. So what's the shift? The shift is simply this: is you need clarity before strategy. Now, this is not probably popular thinking in the entrepreneurial world, but I think it's very necessary. Because people are like, hey, you just need to act, execute, execute, execute. And there is a point to that because, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but you need to know like some very important things. Be clear on those before you move forward with your strategy. And it's with identity. It's like who you are. Where do you want to be? Having a vision, and then what's some priorities that are going to guide you, and then execute. Otherwise, you turn into this laundry list of things of burned out and exhausted marriages and kids that don't know you. But a subtle shift can change it all. Now, there's a thing I think we have to address here, and probably the elephant in the room that you don't even really realize. And that is simply this: clarity is misunderstood. Clarity is one of the most misunderstood words, I believe, in leadership right now. You mentioned clarity, it's the buzzword, and like, oh yeah, we need more clarity. And what does that mean? And that misunderstanding is why it's so powerful and also dangerous. So I feel like we need to break that down here very quickly, very simply. That what do we mean by this clarity? Why is it misunderstood? Clarity gets confused with simplicity. Now, let's think about this. People think that clarity means I doing less, or I'm just simplifying everything. I'm going to make it easy, or I'm going to dumb it down type of a thing. And I don't believe that's clarity. I don't believe that's clarity. See, clarity doesn't remove complexity. Clarity isn't about just removing complexity. It's about removing confusion. Because clarity can be a very simple thing to do, but yet very hard to implement. So clarity isn't about removing the complexity. It's simply about removing the confusion, because you can do hard things and still be clear because you know why you're doing them. When you know that you have an outcome that you are trying to accomplish, then you're willing to endure some pain. You're willing to endure some risk. You're willing to endure a lot more things because you know where it's going. You know what the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And that, my friends, is clarity because it removes the confusion. Now, if you've ever sat in a cockpit of an airplane, or whether it's in simulation or in real life, I mean, it can be pretty complex. Like, how do those guys know what to push, what buttons to flip, and all these different things? But they know it's clear. They have their checklist. They know what they're going through because clarity organizes complexity so that the actions that need to happen become obvious. Now, once we say clarity gets confused with simplicity, but it also gets mistaken for certainty, that I just gotta know. This one is huge because people think that clarity means that having every answer. It means that some people think that clarity means that there's no doubt or no risk. Clarity is not about that. It's actually about knowing. It's about knowing what matters. It's about knowing what doesn't matter. It's what you are committed to. That's what clarity is about, knowing. It's what matters, what doesn't, and what you're committed to, because you can be clear and still uncomfortable, or you can be clear and still uncertain. Because clarity is a direction. It's not a guarantee. Clarity is a direction, not a guarantee. As I mentioned before, it's like when you know what the outcome that you're wanting, it's willing to endure that because you have the direction. Now, clarity gets reduced sometimes just to vision boards. Some people hear clarity and think like, oh, journaling, yay, it's manifesting, it's writing my goals in a notebook, and I'm going to create this board in my room. And hey, that's partial at best. I'm not knocking those things if that's what works for you, but real clarity shows up in your calendar. Real clarity shows up in what you're spending. It's real clarity shows up in who you're hiring. Real clarity shows up in the boundaries that you have in your life. It's not embodied. If it's not embodied, then it's not clarity. It's just a preference. One thing I think of when I think about clarity is it takes us living our siloed lives and brings it all together. Because you can have clarity in your business and be chaos at home. Well, they're going to affect one another. Clarity is an integrated approach to your life, and to where that you can win at work, you can win at home, you can win at your marriage, you can win as a parent. You can, because you are a person who has clarity. It's not reduced to vision boards. It's not just reduced to certainty, and it's not just reduced to simplicity. But here's another, I think, misunderstanding about clarity too, is that clarity can often become an excuse. And this is a subtle trap. And there's been times I think I've had to catch myself falling into it is, oh, I just need more clarity before I move. I just need to refine that process before it's implemented fully, rather than implementing it where it's at. And I heard the statement one time, it was called Gitmo, which means good enough to move on, and trying to live in that capacity to where it's like, okay, I can put this into play and we will get clear as we move on. And rather than just an excuse of, I'm not going to do anything. Sometimes it's wisdom, but sometimes that's actually fear dressed up as strategy. And so at some point, clarity must convert to a decision. Clarity must convert to, otherwise it just becomes procrastination with good branding. I got my logo. And you're like, oh, I've started a business. Well, have you sold anything? No. Well, then you don't have a business yet. Clarity can be an excuse. Another way that clarity can be misunderstood is it can sound soft. And I know especially in the business world, we don't want to sound soft. We want to be, especially as a man, I want to be strong and all this type of thing. And in a hustle culture, clarity can be dismissed as that, like as passive and reflective and slow and overthinking. And I'm just going to separate myself from the world, and because I got clarity now. But the highest performers in the world, I don't believe they do that. They would operate with this ruthless clarity that has clear standards. It has clear roles. It has clear priorities. It has clear no's in your life. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to say yes to the great things. Because speed without clarity, it just is burning fuel. Now, clarity can also make speed profitable. And that's the tension that you have to live within, because clarity is not simplification. It's not certainty. It's not just inspiration. It's not hesitation. It's alignment. You have your identities. You have your identity, and you have your priorities, which guides your actions. And there's a progression here that you can follow, knowing who you are as a person. Knowing who you are, like knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, how you're made up, what you are good at, what you're not good at, what brings you joy and fulfillment, knowing where your identity is. If your identity is only found in your work, then you are going to have struggles in your life. Because what happens when you take away the thing that you believe that your identity is in? If it's in your work and you take your work away, then what? Your identity has to be rooted in something greater. I'm a person of faith, so I find my identity rooted in my faith, and out of that, everything else flows. And so, yes, my identity is founded there, but yet my assignment, my calling, and all those different things, they flow out of that identity that is rooted in something greater. What are we talking about? Clarity is the new hustle. Sometimes it's misunderstood. Sometimes it's not. But here's the thing. The way that we can test this, I think, in our lives is simply this. Can I state my top 3 priorities in 10 seconds? Ask yourself that. Can I state my top 3 priorities in 10 seconds? Does my calendar actually reflect my clarity? Does my family feel those priorities as well? Those things that you should be clear on, does my family actually feel them? Does my team know them? Because if not, dear friends, today, it's not a motivation problem. It's a clarity problem. So I suggest to you today simply this. Clarity is the new hustle. If you aren't clear on who you are, then start there. You need to reveal and and get to the bottom of that. If it's with you, if you know that part and feel strong in that area, then it's like looking at your team. Is my team operating with ruthless clarity? Do they know why we're doing what we're doing? Do they know how their work actually is connected to their actions? That it's what it's doing for the organization. In a world where we are fastly moving more digitally, with AI coming and all of the crazy advancements just over the last few months, it's going to be us individuals that are clear, that are rooted, that are grounded, and that are able to actually lead their teams with clarity, that are going to be the ones that are going to be like the magnets for the top talent. Because clarity is the new hustle. And so thank you for joining me here today on this podcast. And man, I just want you to live a life of clarity. I want your team and you to be so clear, your team to be so clear that, man, it's just so attractive to those around you, because clarity is the new hustle. We'll see you next time.